Maybe you have analytics, maybe you have a lot of data, but do you really use that data to change your actions and achieve new results? Far too often there's too much analytics and too much data, and it can be overwhelming. And then if you're overwhelmed or you can't see the path, you can't see your blind spot, you're going to be struggling to resolve that challenge and achieve the full potential. In this video, we're going to be sharing techniques to measure results and spark momentum.
Welcome to Growth Amplifiers, where we showcase the best tips, resources, and tools to amplify and scale your business.
The first thing is to use a scorecard, not just an analytics, but to create a dashboard or a scorecard that really defines where you're currently at, where you want to go, and then you can start seeing the trends. You can see the bottlenecks when you do this effectively that are challenging growth. We don't want to just be looking at data. We want to be understanding what are the metrics that will influence and predict the results. What can we do to improve and elevate those results? What are the gaps? What are those bottlenecks that are hindering progress? So when we can do this as a team, we can get perspectives, we can start taking new actions and achieve new results. Now, I was working with a bookkeeper who was also an established author, and she had an internal marketing team, and they were doing good, but they wanted to do great. And she said, you know, I've worked with other marketing people in the past. I've had other people help out. We've made some good progress. I said, do you think you might have a blind spot? I'll be glad to take a look at your analytics and see if we can determine some things that could be improved. It didn't take long. I didn't even need to see her analytics. I looked at her website and online presence, and within a short period of time, we identified some big concerns that were hindering progress. And by sharing that with her and her team, they were able to see if we eliminated those bottlenecks, that would improve our results. Long story short, they made a few small, subtle tweaks and immediately saw an impact in the results, business bottom line. So keeping a scorecard, being able to track the most important metrics, not just all the analytics, but the most important metrics towards the goals that you're focusing on, is really powerful. Next, it sounds very similar to a scorecard. It's a scoreboard. Now, a scorecard is something that has maybe a lot of different metrics that you're measuring over time, and you can see trends, and you're pushing to elevate those metrics to new levels. A scoreboard is typically more visual, and it can spark momentum. For example, have you ever been part of a nonprofit that's maybe working towards a goal? They don't communicate it very well. They're not sharing it with their members. Even the board of directors isn't really aware what the goal is or when the deadline is. And then they completely miss the mark. It's an utter failure. That happens very often. And what does that lead to? It leads to disappointment because people want to achieve their goals. They're not being able to better serve their mission if they're not being effective. One time I was part of a Toastmasters fundraiser. Now, Toastmasters is a nonprofit organization that helps people develop their communication and leadership skills. And they had a fundraiser that they were trying to achieve a financial goal. Now, initially, we were able to get some progress. You've probably seen like a thermometer on, somebody's wall when they're trying to do a fundraiser. And the thermometer is like a great example of a scoreboard because you have a goal that you're trying to achieve and you can visually see where you're at in comparison to a timeline. I know I'm putting my arms here, like imagine that there's a thermometer between my hand, right? And at the bottom, there's $0 and at the top, there's like $10,000. And you've got to achieve this goal in 30 days. Where do you want to be approximately 15 days in? Approximately you want to be halfway through the goal, right? And you can tell that if you're way down here on day 20 and you need to be up here on day 30, you're behind. And what this does is this helps everyone see the goal visually, be reminded that there is a goal, and really push to achieve the goal. And just like a football team in the last 2 minutes of a game, it's really commonly happens when that timeline's whittling down, people will do the extra push to achieve that goal. And that's what happened in this Toastmasters fundraiser is at the last week, people saw that we're not going to hit our goal unless we really push. People pushed harder, they achieved the goal. That's really what can make a big difference is using that scoreboard. If you're leading a team to achieve a result, have a scoreboard. Tell people what their goal is, where they're at, where that timeline is, so they can see where they're at in comparison and know to see if they're on track, behind track, so that they'll push and go the distance to achieve that result. Question for you is, what's an example of a scoreboard you've seen be effective? If you have a story or an example, love to see it in the comments. All right, the third thing we're talking about today, we talked about the scorecard and scoreboard, two effective tools. Now, along with them is implementing a cadence of accountability. Want to distinguish, accountability isn't discipline. You don't want to beat people and tell them, oh, you need to do this. Accountability is just making sure that people do what they say they're going to do. You ever had a team working on something and then someone's like, I thought you were going to do that. Well, I thought you were going to do that. It wasn't clear who was doing what, who was accountable for the result. Another problem can happen is somebody sees a challenge or an issue and they don't say anything because they thought, I didn't know I was supposed to say anything about that. They weren't being accountable. Here are some questions that you can ask to elevate the accountability when you're using a scorecard or scoreboard. Number one, who is responsible for the result? Who is responsible for a particular metrics result? So if you're measuring the number of sales calls or the number of sales, who's responsible for the result? Making it clear makes it clear. If everyone is responsible, then no one's responsible. Number two, who is responsible for measuring the metric? Ideally, it's someone different than who's responsible for the result. That helps keep a little integrity with the measuring. Number three, how often will these metrics, this data, be measured? Is this something getting measured daily? Is it weekly? Typically, going more than a month, then it starts being hard to really make a scorecard or scoreboard very effective. So recommended is daily, weekly, bi-weekly, something of that cadence. Where will the metrics be recorded? It should be in the scorecard or scoreboard, but you want to be clear on where it's being measured. If people don't know where to put the data, then they're not going to put it in the right place. When will it be reviewed? So you have this scorecard. Are you reviewing it? Are you using that information? If you don't review, then you're not really leveraging. Make sure that information is going in there and then you're actually looking at it, reviewing it, and learning from it. It can be a tool. It can tell you what's working, what's not. It can tell you trends. It can help identify bottlenecks, but you can't get the benefits if you don't leverage the tool. The question for you is, how do you recommend elevating accountability for individuals and a team? If you have techniques, I'd love to see your comments. Thanks for your support. I appreciate your insights. And now it's time for the Amplifier Action. I want you to choose one of these ideas that you will take, put into action, or if you already have some version of it in action, what's one thing that you can do to improve, even if it's just a little bit? I'd love to see that in the comments. Be the amplifier you are and share, because it's not just about you, it's about the other people in the world, and we want you to share your insights too. Also, share in the comments one idea you've learned or you were reminded of by watching this video. In our next video, I'll be sharing how to lead a team to greatness by utilizing a scorecard. I'm going to dive in a little bit more with some specific examples on using a scorecard.
To show your support, take a moment to amplify this message by sharing it online. To connect with me or gain more business growth insights, visit www.growthamplifiers.com. Thank you for your support.